This is the exam review. Question number 1 asks the period and the horizontal shift. So whenever you see this equation, immediately you should come up with A, B, C, D. So in this case, A is equal to 3, B is equal to 8, C is equal to 16, D is equal to 0. I'm comparing this to the general formula, y equals A tangent bx minus c plus d. This trig function could be tangent, could be sine, could be cosine, could be secant, cosecant, cotangent. It could be anything. Okay. Now we know the period for tangent is equal to pi over b. So the period is equal to pi over 8. So in this case, the period is pi over 8. Of course, your question is going to be a little bit different. These numbers are going to be different. The horizontal shift, or the phase shift, is equal to C over B. So it's equal to C is 16 and B is 8. So the phase shift is equal to 2. So it moves 2 units to the right because it's positive. That is the first question. The second question here is asking if this is a graph for sine, tangent, cosecant, secant, cotangent, or cosine. So the first thing I do whenever I see these parabolas, I try to graph the reciprocal function. So here I'm trying to sketch a reciprocal function. Each of these parabolas is going to have a reverse parabola, the other side, meaning this is a valley, so this is going to be a mountain, and etc. I don't have to be precise when it comes to intersections, so I don't care. Now, looking at this graph, this is a clearly graph of sine, which means this is the reciprocal of sine. And we know that the reciprocal of the sine function, t or x or whatever, it's x in this case, so let me change it. We know that is equivalent to cosecant. So the graph here of the function is a cosecant. And that is the second question. The third question here, we need to come up with an equation for this function right here. As you can see, this is going to be either sine or cosine. The first step I usually do is to try to sketch the midline. Let me just make it a little bit. So the midline in this case is, I'm going to count the units between this line and this line. So 1, 2, 3, 4, which means the midline is going to go exactly here. And immediately I can say that D is equal to 2, which is the midline. Okay. Now, I'm going to try to sketch the reciprocal function, meaning each of these parabolas is going to have a parabola, a reverse parabola. So this one is going to go like that. And this one is going to go like this. And this one is going to go like that. And now I'm going to try to sketch. So I'm assuming they go like that. You get the idea. Okay. Now I'm going to focus on finding ABC using the red graph, which is the reciprocal function. First of all, this function is sine. That means the parabolas are for the reciprocal of sine. So we know that the reciprocal of sine function, I'm going to say this is x, is the cosecant. So we're working with the cosecant here. I found D. The amplitude in this case is A, and it's positive. A, so the amplitude here is 2. The next step is to find B. In order to find B, we need to find the length of the period. So here is the length of the period. Here is one period. So the length of the period is 2 units. It appears to be 2 units. So I'm going to say the period so A is equal to 2. The period is equal to 2 units, which means I can find B. Since the period is equal to 2 pi over B for sine function, so 2 equals 2 pi over B, and then I can solve for B by interchanging those two numbers. So now I have B equals 2 pi over 2, which is equal to pi. So B is equal to pi. I have D, I have A, I have B, and now I need to find C. So C is basically the phase shift. My observation here tells me that the sine function did not shift to the right or to the left, which means the phase shift equals 0. And since the phase shift is equal to C over B, and we know B is equal to pi, that means C is equal to 0. So 0 equals C over pi, which will lead to pi times 0 is 0, that C is equal to 0. So C is equal to 0. Now, to create the function, or to write down the function, we're going to follow the general form. So the general form says y equals A, and then sine or cosine or tangent or whatever. In this case, we're working with cosecant, so I'm going to say cosecant B x minus C plus D. Cosecant, I put cosine there accidentally, so that is actually cosecant. So the function is going to be 2 cosecant B is equal to pi minus 0, I'm not going to write it down, and then plus D. So that is going to be the equation for that graph. Number 4, I will let you practice doing that, and you can check with the key at the back. So I'm not going to repeat the process again. Question number 5, this is basically asking, what is this function? This is the sine function. It's very clear.